Welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, I'm going to be sculpting a teacup dragon. So this sculpt is based off a drawing I did a while back for Smaugust. And Smaugust is a month-long challenge you do in the month of August, where each day you have a different prompt and you have to take whatever that prompt is and draw a dragon based around it. So for this day, the prompt was tea, so I drew a teacup with a dragon swimming through it and wrapped around it. And after I posted that picture on Instagram, I had someone comment that it would be a very cool sculpt, and I hadn't thought about that before, but after having seen that, I was like, yeah, that would be very cool. So I decided to go ahead and try it, and it was a pretty fun sculpt. The biggest difference with this one versus most of my sculpts is I didn't use Forger at all, which for those of you who haven't watched my videos in the past and don't know what I'm talking about, Forger is an app for the iPad, and I usually start my sculpts off in there just to rough out the basic shape, and then I put it into ZBrush, which is what I'm using here to finish it off. But with this one, I decided to try and push myself and just do it all from ZBrush. And also, I think it actually was easier in the end, because like doing the teacup and things like that would be a lot harder in Forger, because it's pretty limited as far as the amount of things you can do. So I did end up just doing the whole sculpt in ZBrush. So as you can see, the first step for me was to create the teacup itself. That way I can get a sense of scale for the dragon. And then once I did that, I created a torus, which is basically just like a big ring, but in ZBrush they're called toruses, and I use those to make the parts of the body that wrap around the teacup, and then I would go ahead and cut them up and connect them in different ways. And once I got the basic shape, almost like a snake shape, just wrapping around, but super simple, then I went ahead and now what I'm doing is just sculpting the head out. And I went ahead and did the head at this point because I wanted to get the head done and have a lot of nice detail on that, so that could help influence the rest of the sculpt. But also I needed that to set a sense of scale for the rest of the sculpt, because I am working off the drawing that I did, but I'm still taking some artistic liberties. Like you'll see by the end of this, I add a lot of scales to this dragon, whereas in the drawing I didn't. Is pretty much just a smooth body. One of the reasons this sculpt was so fun is because I had been drawing dragons so much that I was just kind of in the dragon zone, so this kind of came easy to me. But also I've done a few sculpts based off of images before. I did a Zuko that was based off the DVD cover of Avatar Book 1, and I did tweak it, like I altered it so it's like my design for a Zuko in the live action series, but it was like the same pose. Or the first video I have on this channel is actually me sculpting Thor versus Gore the God Butcher, which is a character from the comics, if any of you had seen or read. And that was fun, but it's really tough because I was trying to make it look like the actual cover to the comic book I was copying. But I still had my own artistic liberties, but I was trying to make it look as much like the cover as possible. And it's pretty tough for me to copy it in that way. But with this one, I was just copying my own art, so I didn't have as much issues if I had decided to change something, because they're both my versions, so that was kind of fun. So like I said earlier, I added scales across this whole body, so that's what I'm doing here. I'm just sculpting one scale, and then I'm going to go in and place this one, and then I'll copy it and place the next one underneath it, and just copy them all the way down his back, so I don't have to sculpt like 100 individual scales. And one thing also that was fun about this sculpt was the coloring process. I had a lot of fun with. So like right there, you can see the teacup is now white, where everything else is just this kind of basic gray. And that's because in ZBrush you can change the color of things, but you can also change the material. So like if you look on the left hand side, there's a little ball on the bottom that says basic material, and that's because it is the basic material. That's what you start off with in ZBrush. It's just this basic, not too shiny, not too matte, just kind of in the middle gray material. But you can go in and you can actually change the material. So like the one I use for the teacup is called toy plastic, and I chose that one because it looks really good in white, and it looks really shiny or glossy, which is what I was looking for, because I wanted the teacup to look like it was ceramic, which for any of you who have ever painted with ceramic glazes, like on tiles or possibly cups or anything like that, you'll know that the paint is very matte and like almost chalky, and you'll paint it on to whatever you're doing, and then you'll put it in a kiln and cook it, and then it'll come out very glossy, and it almost looks like glass at that point. And that's kind of what I was going for here. I wanted it to be a nice shiny white, like that kind of glass ceramic look. So I have the teacup with that specific white toy plastic material, and then you'll see I'll actually do some white toy plastic on the dragon along with the gold to kind of make it look like this dragon was like meant for this teacup. And this scale that I'm placing over and over, I was at first worried that it was going to look too similar because it is the same scale over and over again, but I do scale up and down a little bit, and I tweak a few things here and there. But also, like, from far enough away, it doesn't really matter. I didn't end up having an issue with it. You can't really tell. Like, it's just, you just think of it as dragon scales. You don't really think of it as the same thing over and over again. At least I didn't, so I didn't have a problem with it. But placing the scales was one of the biggest problems, because it was a pretty high poly count sculpt, because I wanted a lot of detail in the scale itself. So I would place them all, and then it would kind of lag out ZBrush because it was too much going on. So I had to place the scales into like different groups of 15, and so I think I had like 5 or 6 groups of 15 scales going all the way down his body, and I could only have some of them on at different times, and it was kind of a hassle, and probably something I could have avoided if I did just a little lower poly count, but yeah, I think it ended up working out fine. And here you can see I'm painting him gold like he is in my picture, but then I'm trying to do all the hard surfaces, like the top of his head or the scales. I'm trying to make them look like that white toy plastic, that ceramic glass look. And this part in the sculpt was probably my favorite process, because I got his whole body laid out and had the scales going across the top, so obviously I could sculpt on the top of his body, but the scales are going to cover it, so there was kind of no point. So then I had to go in, and his underbelly was looking pretty basic, so that's where I went in here and started adding some extra details and stuff. And this is my favorite part of the sculpt, just when everything's roughed out, and as far as like a sense of scale and everything's pretty much there, and then you just go in after that and add in any final tiny details, these tiny wrinkles. They're time consuming, but they're fun to me. I love doing it. So this was probably my favorite part of sculpting. I feel like is really tying it all together. And even with doing this, I wanted to sculpt all these wrinkles going on his underbelly all the way down, but you'll see I eventually get to a point where the scales are covering everything on top, and then he's wrapping around the teacup, so his underbelly isn't being shown either. So you don't end up having to sculpt all this detail all the way down his body, because you're never going to see it. So it was actually not too bad of a process. And then here didn't end up working out, but it was kind of a test to make a cool looking dragon eye, and yeah, I don't think it ended up looking very good, so I scrapped it. But one thing I want to get into more in the future is there's some programs for painting. Like ZBrush, you can do some pretty cool stuff paint wise, a lot better than you can on Forger. But you can download programs like Substance Painter, and I think there's even some free ones that you can download that you can do a lot more with, and you can do eyes like that and make them look really cool, because you can do translucent materials and glowing materials a lot easier, and you can do a lot of cool things like that. So that's one thing I want to get into in the future, is learn how to use all those other more advanced painting programs to get a good look on, get better looks with my final sculpts. And one thing I'm doing here is I had this idea of having tiny little scales going down the side of his body, and I ended up doing some photos with and without it because I wasn't sure how I felt about it. And I'll post those pictures up at the end of this video, but let me know in the comments how you feel about it. If you think he looks good how he is with just the scales, or if having these tiny scales going down the side of his body look good too. And this is what I'm talking about. Let me know what you think about these little scales on the side. I don't think it looks very good. It kind of looks like popcorn or something weird. And then I did another version that doesn't have it. I think I prefer this version, but let me know in the comments what you think, if it looks better without those tiny little popcorn scales. And let me know in the comments if you have any other cool ideas for things I can sculpt. You can check out my Instagram or my Etsy. Those are both at Zane Customs as well. And anything you see me sculpt here on this YouTube channel, I put up on Etsy for sale. You can purchase it. So you can check that out if you're interested. And I really appreciate anybody that's willing to like, comment, subscribe, anything like that. Really appreciate it. And tune in with next week. I do a new video every week. I try to put them out every Monday. Sometimes I'm a little late on that, but pretty much every Monday I'll have a new sculpt come out, or a video of me drawing or whatever. So check that out if you're interested, and thank you for watching.